Welcome to a very busy Monday after a very busy weekend for Penn State football recruiting. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Our experts, Sean Fitz, Ryan Snyder, joining me today on the show. Gentlemen, hope you had a good weekend. Have you recovered from blue-white? Fitz, how was the tailgating?
Tailgate was a bit wet. Not ideal scenario for actually getting out there and tailgating, but we had tents, so we were happy. No, it was good. It was great to see everybody that dropped by. Thank you for doing that. It's always fun. Dad had a blast. He was exhausted by the end of the day. 2 months, 2.5 months off of getting a new hip, and he's out there slinging burgers and doing all that kind of stuff. So it was fun. I appreciate those that came out.
Yeah, it was a great day for tailgating as long as you don't mind being a little bit wet. It dried off at the wrong time, which I was making the joke, and this is every blue-white game, but like it was a good crowd. They were just all out tailgating when it was nice outside during the game. Ryan, you had a lot of reaction from commitments, and you've been getting a lot of that stuff chronicled over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Just one quick takeaway, something that stands out to you about this weekend, somebody that sent something, maybe one line, anything interesting that kind of pops out to you.
That's a good question. I think the staff did a good job pregame with some guys. A lot of talk about, in the recruiting lounge, putting faces and names, things like that. I would say the committed players, certainly a lot of talking to other guys, getting to know Anthony Specca, getting to know Cooper Cousins, getting to know Quentin Martin was there. I mean, almost the whole 2023 class, those who haven't obviously enrolled were there. So I would say a lot of talk of getting to know the committed guys. The committed guys seem to do a great job, mingling with the uncommitted recruits, of course. And then obviously the staff did a great job pregame, I thought, just getting around families, getting around guys. And for a lot of them, it's not the first time meeting in person, but still one of the first or second times they've really been able to do that.
If you want to check out more of what he wrote this weekend, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We got a lot of great content up on a Monday. Ton of stuff, actually, before 10 a.m., so that's pretty great. And if you go right now, I checked this morning, our spring game special is still live. So you get 4 months for $10. Sign up right now. You can get the inside information. You can get a little more context to what we're talking about here on the show today. What we're going to be talking about is the recruiting commitments over the weekend. Caleb Brewer did not get a breaking news video because we were all still at the stadium, I think, when he committed. But either way, that's what happens when you commit on blue-white game is, that's what happens. But we'll be talking about Caleb Brewer, Keandre Barker, both committed this weekend. And, of course, reaction from some of the recruits that were there as well. Get a feedback of that. And we'll look ahead to the transfer portal at the end of the show. So before we get to all of that, please like the video, subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on YouTube because there's all kinds of great content coming at you hard and fast. We're going to start with Caleb Brewer. Nittany Lions getting another commitment here in the class of 2024. Fitz, I'm going to come to you. Tell us a little bit about Brewer and what you think his fit is with the Nittany Lions.
Well, thanks. First off, my neighbors mowing people just decided to start when we went live, so that's cool. So I'm going in and out of mute here. But Brewer, a 6'4 plus, 200. He's going to cap himself at 285 pounds because he's a wrestler. But listing him as a jumbo athlete, he's an interior offensive lineman for Penn State, I believe. Could also be a defensive tackle eventually. But he's got that wrestling background, tough kid. Plays tight end in a wing T offense, which, if you know anything about a wing T offense, you're essentially another offensive tackle out there. So he's one of those guys. He's been run blocking. He's been growing. Teammate of Javen Williams. So I know Ryan's seen him in person at least a little bit. But Penn State was in this one. They offered him back in January. He seemed to be among a glut of offers in the in-state realm. He's a pretty good athlete, just all around. Like I said, he throws in track, he wrestles and things like that. Was curious to see if they would have him camp to get a better idea of his foot speed and things like that. But Penn State felt comfortable. They gotten feedback from people they trust over the last couple of weeks. Brewer went out and visited Notre Dame. I know Michigan's been in the mix as well. But decided that he wanted to stay home. This was one of those ones that materialized in that sweet spot after the Friday morning taping of the recruiting show and the Friday afternoon release of the S Zone. We had that peg down. So he was a guy that got added to the commitment watch list on Saturday, and he ended up popping as Ryan predicted, on the ride home for both of us from the stadium. So he jumps in as the one game day commitment, the one public game day commitment from Blue White over the weekend.
So Ryan, your thoughts on Brewer from what you've seen of him on film? Then I'll kind of fill in what I've seen watching Wyomissing over the last couple of years. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add outside of what Sean added. I would say he did camp with them last year, Sean, and of course, obviously, getting updated numbers is always something they do want to do. But he did camp with them last year, so they do have a little bit of a feel for what he brings. I think this the biggest thing is he a guard? Is he a D lineman down the road? That's just really what I'm curious to find out. Excuse me. But this was a situation where he's a top prospect in Pennsylvania, and they're never going to pass up those guys. I kind of thought Notre Dame was in a good spot with him, but clearly Penn State was in a better spot than what I think we realized. So Penn State locks him up. Franklin, I think Franklin is always going to try and get the top 10 players in Pennsylvania, and it doesn't really matter how they fit. They'll figure that out later. Because this is kind of one of those situations where he could play a variety of positions, and let's just get him on campus and figure it out down the road. But where is Brewer? Is Brewer top 10 in Pennsylvania? Actually, now that I'm running my mouth thinking that, is he right outside the top 10? I gotta look that up.
He is 8th in Pennsylvania according to 247, 18th according to On3. So there is a bit of a disparity there. Pretty big disparity. In the industry ranking, he is 15th. So not quite in the top 10. So here's the thing. I would say that he probably fits that mold. And just some of my thoughts watching the offense yesterday. First off, he's not a tight end. Of the places he's going to fit, guys, it's not going to be a tight end. This is not a Mega Barnwell situation. He's really athletic. Obviously, you can see that on film. He played tight end. He runs routes. Like, it's fun to watch big guys run in the open field. I would say in some ways he might be a little more raw than Javen Williams, though, in terms of, obviously, in pass protection, he's not pass protecting a lot because he's running routes, but I don't think he really uses his hands at all. You mentioned defensive lineman. One of my biggest issues watching him play is that he has basically a rudimentary kind of rip move where he's trying to hook and run. Outside of that, he doesn't really use his length, and I don't know that he has great length. But this is, kind of this thought of where he fits. Fitz, I'm going to come back to you on this question of, you have Cooper Cousins in the class. You have William Satterwhite, who's a top target they're still trying to get. Now you got Caleb Brewer. I'm counting 3 interior offensive linemen, and the conversation with us has been they need tackles in this class. So how do you think that this fits? Is it kind of what Ryan said, it doesn't really matter, they want to take him, so they're going to take him? Or do they have to do some juggling throughout the class now that they've added him to the class? You're on mute, bud. Still get you on mute.
It's that mower is getting me. No, I think there's some juggling involved here in the sense that, you've got Donovan Harbor ready to announce tomorrow. Like, he was on campus this weekend. So, like, it's going to get even more muddled. A lot of guards visiting this weekend, guard centers.
Yeah.
Cooper Cousins does give you some flexibility. We've been penciling him as a center, but he does have the size and length and I think the feet to play tackle. So one of those guys that you can bump out there if you need to. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. I don't see Brewer as a tackle. Don't see Harbor as a tackle. So you've got, guys that fit a certain profile. And I think Cooper's kind of on the outside of that. So that helps a little bit, but yeah, you've got to get tackle recruiting going. Obviously they had some guys in this weekend. Garrett Sexton seems to be a guy that's surging with them from Wisconsin. Penn State all of a sudden, tapping into that sweet recruiting pipeline of Wisconsin that they've been so successful with Harbor's set to announce tomorrow. Garrett Sexton, it seems like Penn State's in a good spot there. Corey Smith was on campus this weekend. So Wisconsin all of a sudden has become a hotbed for Penn State for some reason. Can't really explain that one anyway. I think that they've got a situation, we've mentioned Brewer as a jumbo athlete, have that positional flexibility in there because it seems like there's a lot of guards on the board right now. So need some work on that. Need to figure out what the situation is for official visits and things like that with offensive tackles. But it's going to get interesting. I still think they would take Satterwhite. He did not commit over the weekend. One of those ones that we talked about last week in terms of he went down to Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Auburn, slowed things down for him a little bit. On the other hand, you've got tackles. Kevin Haywood was here over the weekend. Still went well. Still feel pretty good about where that one stands, even though he's talking about scheduling officials now. So I think that, Penn State's got to work on that tackle board. I don't know that it's a situation that, is ready. It's a panic situation, but Penn State obviously far ahead of where they're at on the interior.
Yeah. 6 players in this class on the offensive line, Ryan. Is that a possibility now? Kind of looking at what the options are on the interior, and what's the upper limit? 7? Like, if they got the right number of guys, could they take 7? Because I know tackle, like I just said, I'm just going to reemphasize this. It seems like tackle, especially watching the game and looking at the depth chart, might need some guys there. So, like, how do you figure that into the total number of offensive linemen?
I mean, if you're including transfer portal, possibly, I would think they want to spread out the scholarship distribution, right? I mean, the issue they're running into right now. I mean, Jimmy Chris, of course, entered the portal yesterday. They still have 8 offensive linemen currently on the roster who are in their 4th or 5th year or grad year, whatever you want to call it. So guys that could realistically be gone after the season. So I don't see them taking 7 high school guys, right? That just doesn't work really well for down the road distribution wise. But I would see. Look, if we're including Brewer, we're labeling Brewer as an athlete, and that's where we're going to label him throughout. But if you keep him in that mix, I would say 6 is a possibility. You got Cooper, you got Donovan Harbor, William Satterwhite. I mean, like, those feel like the. And again, I kind of agree with Sean. I think Cooper. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Cooper ends up getting bumped out the tackle down the road now. But they're going to push really hard for Satterwhite. They're going to push really hard for Donovan Harbor. Am I missing anybody at guard? I don't really think there's anybody else we'd really be missing there, because then you have Sexton, you have Haywood. Of course, Liam Andrews was just back on campus as well. Is Liam? So one thing was talking to people with Liam. Is he pushing D tackle? Did you get any feedback?
I think that's his preference. Like, he's been talking about that for a while now, and another one of those jumbo athletes. Like, Liam, to me, is a guy that you take no matter what. Like, if you need to tell him defensive tackle and you need to play him at defensive tackle for a year, go for it. I mean, this is not Gunnar Givens, a couple years ago when he wanted to play defensive tackle and he just wasn't athletic enough to do it. Liam Andrews could play defensive tackle at Penn State. He could play defensive tackle a lot of places. He's really good. But so, like, label him as a jumbo athlete if you need to. Label him as an offense. It doesn't matter what you label him. If you label him a Penn State commit, it doesn't really matter. That's the important label to carry. But he's an important. Like, there are, I think, very few guys that can say that, and most of those guys are corner receiver type guys. O-line, D-line doesn't happen as often as you'd like. I know a lot of people would like to turn offensive linemen to defensive tackles, as Penn State struggles with defensive tackle production and size and all that kind of stuff, but it's just not that easy. They're 2 different skill sets, to be honest with you. So we saw CJ Thorpe, who, kind of fit the mold of, like, a guy that you thought could do it, and he couldn't do it. So that's kind of where we find ourselves projecting these guys. But I do think Liam Andrews could do it. He's a phenomenally talented individual, and probably definitely one of the top guys on the board, regardless of position, for Penn State.
Before we get to our next recruit, we got to talk about today's sponsor, and that is myperfectfranchise.net. Are you ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream? Are you maybe a displaced corporate leader that needs to find a new direction, maybe a side hustle? Whatever it is, Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net. He is a franchise consultant who can help you out in finding your future. Andy is... his services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. I grilled him, by the way. So when we had a meeting on Skype to talk about, what he does, how he does it, I was very like, hey, man, how does this work? Because people have to buy into this with sometimes their life savings. And he's like, no, I get it. Like, that's exactly what I do, and why I do it is that he's trying to find the perfect fit for you so that you can be successful and find a brighter future. He will take you through the whole consultation process, which takes a couple of months. He'll have you speak with different management teams from different corporate structures, and they'll find the right place for you that fits your passions, your expertise, and your level of financial situation. So learn more, because I can't tell you all the things. I just got a crash course in it. myperfectfranchise.net is where you talk to Andy. You can see his contact here on the screen, and if you are listening on the podcast version, his phone number 404-973-9901. 404-973-9901. Thanks again to Andy Ludicky of My Perfect Franchise. Okay, so the next commitment that we had from this weekend came yesterday afternoon, and that is for 2025. So we are again, adding to the class of 2025, Keandre Barker. Let's go to Ryan. Ryan, what do you know about Barker? What do you know about the situation with his commitment leading into the blue-white game? You're on mute. Just give you a heads up.
Now it's me, Sean. Now I got myself on mute. I don't have any mowers out here, though.
I get it.
I'm just over here coughing. Anyway, look, I'd be lying if I said I knew a ton. I still have to learn more. I've only interviewed Keandre once, and we'll line up an interview here in the coming days. I would expect. The thing he hammered, man, is Saquon Barkley, which is so funny because we talk about that all the time with running backs, right? And Penn State's pitch. But like, I really kind of think Saquon Barkley is like maybe one of the main reasons he is actually committing to Penn State, which is interesting. He's got 18 months to go, right? And now you have unlimited official visits. That certainly grabs my attention because it's not going to impact this 2024 class as much, but that 2025 class, I think a lot of schools out there are going to be pitching for him to come visit down the road. So it's one of those recruitments, man, where J1 Snyder gets on somebody early, and I think that really piqued his interest. And they've done a good job. They've been consistent with it. But the only other visits I know he took also are Ole Miss and Mississippi State. I think he took one or two others, but Ole Miss, Mississippi State were the two I really know he took. So I'm just kind of curious to see on, once we get to September 1, because coaches aren't going to stop recruiting him, right? I mean, they're going to be on pretty hard. How does that impact him? He's from Texas, doesn't have a lot of ties to the area. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and doubt that J1 Snyder can keep somebody on board for that long a period of time. He's arguably the staff's best recruiter. So somebody I got to learn more about, if I'm being honest. He emerged, I don't know, what was it, 6-7 weeks ago, Sean, as somebody that was showing a lot of interest in Penn State. I was curious to see if Penn State would take him this early, just because you have the spring evaluation period coming up. There's a lot more that they can still learn. But at the end of the day, I think he's just too good of a player for them to tap the brakes on. And obviously now they got to do everything they can to keep other schools from pushing over the next 18 months.
Fitz, what are your thoughts on Barker and the situation of a running back 18 months out in commitment? And what do you want to add to that?
I'll add those highlights that we're showing you on the YouTube show, are from Arkansas. So he's going to move to Texas. It's going to be another level in terms of competition. But I've heard good things, just basically really, really dynamic athlete. I mean, he thinks I talked to some people that said if he was in the 2024 class, they'd still take him. So like that to me says a lot about a 2025 running back. Obviously going to have to pick up some of the nuances of the position, pass protection, things like that, but he's got a ways to go there. I'll agree with Ryan in that, I didn't put a pick in, we knew he was coming to Penn State, but I didn't put a pick in for him just because it's very early. A lot can happen between now and then. So be interested to see how this goes. Ryan mentioned September 1st. That's going to be a big day for him in terms of the real interest coming through. He's going to have a chance to visit schools that are closer to his new home in Texas. So there's a lot of questions, but I mean, you look at our site. This was pretty funny actually. Last night when he committed, by the way, it was just like a travel glitch. Like he was traveling all day, so he didn't announce it right when he said he was going to announce. There was no drama or anything like that. But if you watched, like Chad Simmons had a story, Sam Speaks had a story, Ryan had a story, like everybody had a story on this kid coming to Penn State. So it was like one of the worst kept secrets, and that to me is a good thing. I mean, he's been very open with people in that area, recruiting analysts and things like that in that area, where you've got, he basically out and out 6 weeks ago probably said, I'm going to Penn State, or five weeks ago or whatever it was. So that to me screams legitimate interest. I think they'll have to keep up that relationship, but it's a good pickup. That 2025 class has started hot. You could argue on a scale more momentum than the 2024 class, which has also gotten hot recently. So obviously maybe that's gone away, dissipated a little bit, but no, Penn State's done a good job in building that out. And if they're trying to go a little bit more national, trying to get a little bit more out there, they've done it with a guy like Barker.
Yeah, from BB, Arkansas, transferring to the Woodland School. We had a couple of people when we had our commitment video last night that live in Texas, and I put it out there assuming that it's a Texas school. It means it's a serious step up in competition and level of coaching and all that stuff. A couple of guys, Rick, I want to give a shout out to Rick. He says the Woodlands is 20 miles northeast of my home. It's a 5A power program in Texas, competition and coaching. Big step up for the kid, no doubt. And then Ryan agreed with him. Texas, he lives in Woodlands, so it is a competition here is pretty strong. So he'll have to do a lot more, I think, to look like he did on film in Arkansas. But overall, a good recruit. Is it one of the things I talked about yesterday on the video was, to get a running back recruit so early in the process. You mentioned 18 months out. Normally that position, because it's so reliant on athleticism and the track times are not elite for what we've seen from Barker. Not that he's slow or anything, but not that, what is the development path going to be like? Is it a rare exception that they accept a commitment from a guy at that position so far out? Ryan, what is that a fair read of that?
Well, I mean, the one thing I would say is that the 2025 running back board is pretty deep. I mean, Gideon Davison, we haven't really talked about. He just had Penn State in his top 5. You have Jabri Wallace-Coleman, who he's committed to Georgia. I don't really see a whole lot coming from that long term, but you got Bo Jackson in there, who we like a lot. You got Iverson Howard at Quincy Orchard. You got Bud Coombs at DeMatha. Like there's a lot of guys there. So it sets up, again, to be another class where they take potentially 2 running backs. See, Frank, you mentioned his track times. I haven't seen them. Do you know what they are? I didn't know.
I don't have
Are they
any
from his freshman year.
There's an 11.35 from his 8th grade year, which is actually awesome.
8th grade.
Like that.
8th grade. That's great.
So I don't think there's speed concerns here, but I haven't found anything for 2022 or 2023 so far. So I actually just shot off before this show. I shot off a text to see if we can get any times from anybody around here. But I don't think speed is a huge concern here. 11.35 as an 8th grader, whether it's FAT or not, it's pretty well moving.
Yeah.
11.3 as an 8th grader, man. That should be like a 10.7 by the time you're a senior, which is great. Yeah. Honestly, would you agree with that? I mean, like that's a little bit fast, but like that should be at least 10.8, 10.9. Like, I mean, the progress there should work well.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. It's all about progress. I mean, if you're going out and running a 10.9 as a 8th or as like a 10th grader, and you don't put on any muscle, or you're still running a 10.9 as a senior, but you're still 165 pounds, it doesn't really matter much. So it's going to depend on physical development and things like that. 11.3 is a pretty good starting point, whether it's FAT or not in 8th grade. He can fly.
That's the point about development too, is like, how does he develop? And at the running back position, we've seen guys that don't, that start out pretty decent and then they kind of level off. So I'm curious to watch that. I think it's a special circumstance given that he is so talented and he committed so early that you don't usually see that, I think, from Penn State and from running back commits specifically. So any last thoughts here on Barker before we move on to some of the reaction from the weekend from guys who didn't commit? Anybody got some final thoughts on Barker?
Not for me.
All right.
25. I mean, 2025 running back boards is going to be interesting. Because they're Iverson Howard, Bud Coombs. I mean, there's a lot of guys that Bo Jackson. Like, we'll see. I'm just very curious to see how that plays out now.
You just want to keep saying Bo Jackson, which I don't blame you.
He's awesome.
All right,
awesome.
Let's get
to. By the way, he's a really good baseball player too. Everyone, sorry. Go ahead.
Let's get to our next segment.
Love making these videos. Go on.
Of course, you can get the reaction here. Hey man, I work hard on these. I got a style going here for our intros. Read and react here on the Blue White Illustrated live show, recruiting show. You can go read at bluewhiteillustrated.com all the information that we got from these guys. We're going to be talking about a couple of players that the guys have spoken to, but we're going to react to it here on the show and give you some of that information. Again, it's a great time to remind you, 4 months for $10. An awesome deal for what we have going on at Blue White Illustrated. So, Fitz, I want to come to you with any reactions you got, just general reactions about the weekend from either the staff or some players that you talked to. How I'm assuming it's positive coming out of the Blue White game, even with the weather.
Yeah, it's always positive. You get a sense of where things stand with some guys. Some guys that we were watching on commit watch on the way in. Kevin Haywood and William Satterwhite did not commit. Satterwhite, we kind of hedged on that one at the end of the week with those late offers, especially that Clemson offer. He told me Clemson and Auburn were 2 really good visits for him. So I could see him wanting to circle back around, take official visits, and then decide before the season instead of, popping. Penn State was on him early. They have a very good relationship. So I still think they're in a solid position, but, kid's got a lot to think about. And that's, certainly we lose track of that sometimes when following recruiting on a day-to-day basis, is these guys are making the biggest decision of their life. And we're sitting there, like Roman gladiator, just, watching everything happen play by play. So Satterwhite still has a spot, regardless of what happens with Donovan Harbor on Tuesday. things are a little tighter. I don't think there's any discussion about that, but they really like Satterwhite for a reason. Haywood is back in town, or was back in town, all smiles and everything like that on Saturday. So we're going to see which direction he goes from here. I know Ryan caught up with a couple of other big targets in Benedict Ume and Nigel Smith. Liam Andrews was back on campus. That was huge, and we just talked about that a little bit ago. So from the top guys, positive feedback. And for the guys that aren't going to come out and commit in the next week or so, it's good to get that lasting impression before they go set up official visits.
So, Ryan, you spoke with a couple of these guys. Where do you want to start? I'll let you start the bidding of who you want to talk about with your conversation.
Oh, there's only one place to start, and that is Benedict Ume. Wow. So I've had one small talk with Ume before, brief. And this was, I think, my first time, having 10 minutes with him one-on-one, asking, a bunch of different questions. And obviously everything there physically is there, right? 6'5", 240, looks excellent as a prospect. But I thought intellectually, he may be the most mature player I've gotten to talk to in this class. And I think if you guys watch us and read us a lot, Penn State goes after a lot of guys who
are you saying he knocks off
mature.
Brian Robinson? Because you were raving about Brian Robinson.
Dude,
wow.
This guy's incredible, man. Just go read the story. Really, really impressive kid. I need to eventually do a story on just his overall background, how he got to Toronto and everything like that. And we will eventually. But let's get into the recruiting facts. I mean, the thing I would say right now is Penn State is certainly feels like top 3. They got a few things going for him. I think their head coach, or his head coach at Avon Old Farms, John Hooley, who I've interviewed previously. You can find that interview under Benedict's profile. I think that's going to help Penn State. He has a very good relationship with Penn State staff. He actually helped scout for Penn State during the pandemic. He was still up there, not really down here in State College, but he did help in some sort of a role with scouting down the road. So there is a good relationship with the staff. I think that's going to have a big hand Penn State moving forward. He's talking about going to Michigan and Notre Dame this weekend. Let's see if he makes it. Obviously, with him not being with his family, it's basically on Hooley and his staff at Avon to get him around to all these schools. And that's not easy. Obviously, the coaches are trying to do everything they can. But these are high school coaches. They have lives and stuff too. So it's just not easy to coordinate everything. He told me that he will take an official visit to Penn State. We know that will be in mid-June. He has another one set for Duke as well. But this really lines up well for Penn State. And he would certainly be, I think he is Penn State's best chance at landing a 5-star player. He's right outside a 5-star range right now. Obviously, there's 6-7 months to go until those ratings will be sorted out. So let's see where he ends up in the long run. But if Penn State's going to land a 5-star, I think Benedict Ume is their best opportunity. And I left this conversation this weekend thinking if Penn State's not the favorite, they're absolutely top 3. Long way to go still. I think he's going to get some more visits. He's going to probably end up taking all 5 official visits, I would think, just because of how hard it's been for him to travel. But Penn State really set the bar high this weekend. He was also on campus overnight too, stayed until Sunday. I thought that was big, getting around some of the players as well.
I've got to get to the chat quickly because, Ryan, you have an offer here if you want to go down to the Woodlands and watch Keandre Barker. Ryan, who gave us some of the info earlier on one of the videos, says come down to the Woodlands. We'll host you. So if you're heading out on a trip out to Texas, you got Ryan in your corner. And Steven here in the chat donating, as he always does. Thank you, Steven, for the super chat. If you want to get in the conversation, we can absolutely take your questions. We got a couple here more to get to. Feels like Pennsylvania pool of recruits is up in quality recently. Fitz, do you agree with that the quality of PA is higher than it has been, or is this a feel-good vibe from Steven?
I think there's a little bit of both. I mean, it's going to go in waves, all the time. There's going to be years when it's really good. There's going to be years when it's bad. I think this is a very solid class. I think there's a lot. It's very interesting. You mentioned earlier about Brewer's ranking in Pennsylvania. 24/7 has him at number 8. We have him at number 18. We both have him as an 88, and we have similar to almost exactly the same rating scale. So that's interesting to me. I know Doan, very conservative there in terms of ranking kids, at least this early. So it's interesting to see how that has sort of come about. Penn State's been more generous with its offers in state. So I think that's a tough way to maybe decide or judge the Pennsylvania talent. There's a lot of guys in Pennsylvania with Penn State offers that aren't going to come to Penn State because they don't have the opportunity to. So I know that doesn't make any sense when you put that out on paper, but that's kind of how it is. So I think it's a good solid year. Obviously Quentin Martin up at the top. Penn State's got Cooper Cousins already, so they've done a nice job. Rico Scott committed to Alabama over the weekend, pretty good player from Bishop McDevitt. So
didn't see that coming.
I did not see that one coming myself. You were not alone on all sides from that. You were not alone. So interesting to see that one. Good for Rico, because I know he's been angling at that one for a while now. So it's been a good year in Pennsylvania. They're going to continue to drop that. I'm going to pull the rankings up. So if T Frank can filibuster.
Sean, I have it up. Okay. I have it up already. I mean, I can fill it. I mean, so the one thing I would say right now, Pennsylvania has about 15 top 500 players. If you go back to last year, it finished about 8 or 9. So of course, just this class has to play out still, of course, and I would think that probably drops a little bit, maybe down into the 12 or so range. But if you do compare it to last year, looking at top 500, which is high 3 stars and up, it is a little bit of a better year. But then if you go back, of course, to 2022, 2021, they all finished kind of similar, 12 to 15 top 500 players. And of course, Sean, you remember what was it, 2019, 2020? Remember, Philly was kind of down. That's when those, the talk of Penn State and Philadelphia kind of rose up. But that was because Philadelphia was kind of down at the time as well. So it's just, like as Sean said, it's a wave, man. You had 2020, 2021, not quite as high. Things jumped up there the last couple of years. Last year, certainly top heavy last year. There was some really good top heavy talent, but not as deep. And then this year, again, you have the Quentin Martins. You have, a couple other 4-star guys. But again, it's pretty deep when you look at high 3 stars and up.
Yeah, and if you look at the top, I mean, obviously Quentin Martin, Tysier Denmark, still a guy that Penn State's in on and trying to get back to campus, and Cousins, and then Haywood. And I think there's probably a line right after Kevin Haywood, although Malachi Williams, pretty good player.
Yeah,
like he's probably one of those guys that I would bump up a little higher. And then you go down, there's a lot of like 88s, if you will, not to use that as a descriptor, but like high 3-star kids, good size, good athleticism, but maybe just you're just lacking in certain areas. So it's a good deep group, but maybe it's not like the 10 to 12 Penn State quality kids in that general area.
So we got another question here.
Let me add real quick.
Sure.
Just with Malachi Williams real quick. We have him, Sean, of course, we have him as top 200 at On 3. 24/7 has him a high 3-star still. ESPN doesn't have him rated. I think once that gets sorted out, you're going to see Williams in that top 5, no doubt.
All right.
Yeah, and by the way, you want to check this out, on3.com in the player database. You can look up Malachi Williams. You can see all the stuff we're showing you here on the screen. So great question, Stephen. Got a good long conversation out of the Pennsylvania recruiting situation. I want to throw it to the next question here in the chat, and that comes from Kevin. We'll be talking about the blue-white game on Wednesday on our BWI live show that we focus on the team, but I want to make sure we got a shout out to him because he gave us a super chat donation. Appreciate that as well. Don't think Drew Aller will face better secondary all season than he did on Saturday. Lots to like about this defense. Iron sharpens iron. Guys, I don't know if it was the secondary that we were coming away with of going like, wow, that's a really good unit when we were looking at what Drew Aller was facing. Just round the horn quickly. Fitz, your thoughts on the defensive performance and who you thought stood out.
Yeah, a couple of the guys that we highlighted late in spring camp, Denai Sutton, KJ Winston, dudes on the white team, on the backup. I hate to say backup, it's a negative connotation, but on the second team defense there, they were all over the place. So I'm excited to see those guys. Like I said, I tweeted out the other day, if those guys are back up, this defense is going to be okay. And I agree with you. The secondary is going to be as good as he'll face all season. But yeah, you're right. The pass rush was like, he's got to figure out that first wave before he can get to the secondary. So we'll see what happens. I mean, you feel good about that defense. I was thinking about this morning. We do all this hand wringing about defensive tackle, and like, there's probably 2 or 3 spots on offense where you've got concerns, maybe not concerns, but you have conversation about quarterback needs to get better, receiver needs to get better, offensive line always needs to get better, tight end depth, all that kind of stuff. So it's funny that the standard is so high on defense that glaring, or the issue that they're having at defensive tackle, where they're fine, they're not great, but they're fine, is such a glaring issue because the secondary is so great. You think the defensive ends are going to be great. The linebackers, have back what they're coming back. So that's just a funny like juxtaposition of how different it is, how different the expectations are for the defense than the offense. But I roundabout way, short answer to your question. Yeah, that secondary is pretty freaking good.
Yeah, the defense made the offensive issues, I think, magnified more significantly. Ryan, we didn't get your thoughts. We had kind of our conversation after the game. Did you catch anything? Do you want to add anything to this?
No, I didn't watch anything. And it's not because I didn't want to. I mean, obviously, I would have loved to watch. I mean, there's 140 recruits on campus. Obviously, I'm cutting photos. We had 20 plus players reacting to the game within an hour or two after the game. I mean, that's what I'm doing the whole time. I'm texting with people. I'm trying to figure out who's going to commit here after the game while I'm driving home. I wish I could tell you more. And unfortunately, I mean, obviously I love watching college football, right? That's why we get into this. But really for every Penn State home game, man, I never really get to watch a whole lot of the game. I spend most of the first half. And obviously if it gets to be a good game and, it's the whiteout or whatever, I'm focused in there in the second half. But this week, man, I saw like 4 plays max.
And that game flew by, and that was awesome.
It did.
I really appreciated the pitch clock there that they've instituted. It was a good time. It was fun, and I'm glad that the weather cleared up for it. But the fast game never hurt anybody, and they got out injury free. So that's really
Yes.
knock on wood, all you can ask for.
Hey, Kevin, by the way, if you want to get more thoughts about the blue-white game, bluewhiteillustrated.com on the Lions Den message forum. I watched the film yesterday. I put up some of my thoughts in a thread. If you sign up now, you can go get those thoughts for just $10, and we can have a conversation there as well. Of course, I'll be breaking down the film in a proper article sometime this week. We got so many things in recruiting to get to, including William Satterwhite. We got him and a couple other players to wrap up here before we get to the transfer portal. So, Ryan, what is the main takeaway from these last guys that we need to get to in terms of uncommitted guys that you kind of caught up with?
I mean, I'll go with Nigel Smith just because that's who I interviewed. Sean interviewed William Satterwhite. The big thing with Nigel, I mean, I think Penn State has certainly been surging there. I expect Penn State to get one of his 5 official visits. I expect that to be in June. He's going to announce the date when he's ready. I'll let him do that. That's it's his story, his announcement. But I do expect him to be back here in June. I would say Penn State really pushed hard. I want to say negative recruiting, but I mean, he made it very clear that they are not going to let him go to Texas A&M or Ohio State. He told me that. He told Sam Spiegelman that. That certainly seemed to be something they pushed really hard on him as something that's they're going to go all out in this recruitment. He's listed at 6'4", 260. He told me Penn State's recruiting him as a defensive end. That certainly grabbed my attention because I had him more as a potential interior guy. Now again, 4 years in a high school or in a college program, already at 260 pounds. Let's see. But he said he's already talked to them about trimming weight if he were to come here. So that grabbed my attention as well. But this is certainly a guy that Penn State is trending upwards with. This was a guy that when he visited previously, I think it was we went through this the other day. It was through a game at the end of last season. I said, Penn State will probably crack his top 10. There'll be a fringe top 5 team. Just look at his offer list. This isn't really one that, especially with Penn State kind of getting in later than other schools, that Penn State usually wins out. Right now, man, they are certainly going to be top 5 in my eyes. But again, you got Ohio State in there, you got Oklahoma in there, you got A&M, a few other top premier programs. Not going to be easy to land. But the fact that he's going to get back for an official visit certainly suggests good things moving forward. Last thing I'll say, he's the first recruit to bring up to me that he plans to take more than 5 official visits now, which of course that was released last week. That changes July 1. So you can only do a handful in June. But if you want to continue to take more official visits during the season, guys are going to be doing that. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. I feel bad for the recruiting staff, we'll say, up at Penn State, who has to keep all their guys committed because now schools all across the country during the season are going to say, hey, I know you're committed, but man, college game day is coming to town this week. Come on over. We'll host you for an official visit. So that'll be interesting to watch. And go ahead. Let's talk about William Satterwhite.
Yeah, Fitz, you touched on him a couple times. So is there anything you want to wrap up with Satterwhite and your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those situations where he got a lot thrown at him very quickly with that southern swing. And like I said, the slowdown offers are there. Georgia, Alabama, that they do this thing. That's how it works. Clemson's in a little bit of a different ballpark, and Clemson does not offer everybody. They've taken a lot of guys. They've taken a handful of guys that, frankly, Ryan and I have been surprised they've taken, and some have panned out, some have not. But at the same time, like, they haven't offered a ton of guys, and so keep it to 100 or so offers per class, and that's a valuable offer. And like, we could talk about throwing those things out like candy, like Penn State does, and other schools do it. Even Alabama does it to some certain extent. But Clemson offers still means something. It's one of the few schools I think it still means something. So I think that one got him to think, and he'll probably step back and take official visits and things like that. So it was interesting because it's you're coming out of the weekend. You had some guys that you expected to maybe pop, and those guys didn't pop, but you had some guys that you didn't expect to pop that turned around. So that's just what makes Blue White Weekend really interesting. It's also interesting to follow and like understand what you're following. Like it's not a situation where all these commits come out on Saturday. This is something, there's sometimes a slow burn. Sometimes that's on purpose, sometimes not. I think what did Harbor say his birthday is Tuesday or something like that. These guys might have their own dates and things like that. So I think that there's, I don't want to say that there's reason to be disappointed, but it wasn't what we were expecting. The outcome is good. Like the outcome is good. They're going to benefit from this for a long time, but you don't have Haywood on you don't have Haywood on the commit list. You don't have Satterwhite. It just looks a little bit different. So still very, very productive weekend, very good weekend for Penn State that will continue to benefit them this week and beyond. But it's just an interesting, just because it didn't go how we thought it would and go how we wrote it might go. It's just a different way to look at it.
So we'll keep you up to date on all that stuff. And if there are any breaking news items in the next couple of days, great time once again to subscribe to Blue White Illustrated on YouTube, hit notifications so that when the video comes up, you can be one of the first people to watch it and get the information. And again, bluewhiteillustrated.com. I'm a broken record. Let's get to the transfer portal, because that's the next part of this. The transfer portal already has claimed one player from the Nittany Lions. Jimmy Chris goes into the portal shortly after the Blue-White game. James Franklin outlined their plan for this offseason. And Fitz, I'm going to come back to you on this because I want you to clear something up. He talked about going after a receiver in the portal, wanting a true 6 deep. Is that referring to Dante Cephas, who was on campus, or does that mean they're looking for another player in the portal beyond what they've already gotten with Malik McClain and Dante Cephas? Is that there was a little bit of ambiguity there and I wasn't even quite sure what he was specifically saying there.
I believe they're gonna exhaust every option possible, and that if that means offering more receivers, I can see that. Matt Zenitz wrote something the other day on 3 that was essentially pointed to Penn State still going after another receiver. Now Dante Cephas is still set to come in May, and they have high hopes with what that's going to be. But if you're in this window where you think you need a receiver, I would not be shocked if they go out. And here's the other thing: like this is a 15-day window, so you're going to see offers, and you're going to see offers to guys, and then you're not going to see Penn State mentioned again. Like, I think I framed it as shoot first, aim later. Like that's kind of where they're at with this, because you have this short window, and a lot of schools are just going to be throwing offers, and it could be a situation where it plays out further. You can take official visits in the summer or after they wrap up graduation in May and things like that. But I think that's very interesting that they're going to keep going. And James was pretty on the nose in that if you are a good enough player, he will take a chance on you. I'm not sure how they're going to make it work with the numbers. We still got some expected attrition to go. Jimmy Chris hit the portal yesterday. That was expected. I know Ryan was on top of that one last week. So there's a lot to play out here from a scholarship perspective. But at the same time, I would not write it off. I mean, they were talking about this. And then the name escapes me right now. Gary Bryant, maybe the USC receiver. They were going to bring him in for an official visit for the Blue-White game. Now, this is before they got Cephas. I mean, this is like Stubblefield era type thing. So they were still talking about bringing in 2 to 3. Malik McClain, we saw on Saturday. Maybe he's not ready to make that jump to being a regular in the rotation. So go out if you can find a guy that can come in right away and make an impact. I think there's varying stages here when you talk about the portal. If you look for an offensive lineman, find a guy that can help you in 2024 and beyond. At corner, same way, find a guy that can help you in 2024 and beyond. Some other positions like wide receiver, maybe you need a guy to come in right away. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. That's kind of what makes the portal good, in the sense that you can patch holes and then you can figure that out. I know that they offered a couple of offensive linemen last night. Emmanuel Pregnon. I don't know that I'm saying that right.
Good job, Sean. Good job.
Sure French. I was going to send it to one of you guys, but Zenitz wrote about him yesterday from Wyoming. It's going to be a situation where you see a bunch of guys that go into the portal and everybody flocks to them right away. We're going to see what happens. We saw this with Rhode Island, Johnny Cornelius. He went in the portal. A bunch of schools went after him, and then all of a sudden he ends up at Oregon, where I think Ohio State was involved, Texas was, a bunch of those really, really top schools. Not that Oregon's not a top school, but a bunch of those other schools were involved, and then, kind of made their way. Saw it with Tank Booker, the defensive tackle from Maryland, who went into the portal, visited Ohio State, visited a bunch of schools, ended up at Arkansas. I think he visited Texas A&M as well. No disrespect to where he ended up, but it's a different level than what he was looking at. So the portal is fickle in that manner, in that, there's going to be schools that throw out offers like Andy. Penn State may be one of them. They did that with receiver, where they offered guys and then not say they didn't follow up, but they weren't in the mix in the long run there. So I could see that happening because this 15-day window is so short and so frantic. You want to be one of the ones that make the first impression. Also, another offer claim last night, Jaden Muskrat, which I had to verify was a real name. He said he was offered by Penn State as well. So I think you're going to see a handful or more offers at different positions, even ones that you don't think necessarily make sense at this point.
This has been the offseason for names in the portal that have been just phenomenal. So Jaden,
tight ends in the portal, like that have gone other places. Amazing names. Absolutely amazing names.
Ryan, how do you see this playing out? Is there anything you want to add to the portal discussion? Because it is very fascinating. And maybe as a side question, does tackle bump up on that need, with Chris moving to the portal, but, just the general situation there? Do you think that has kind of creeped up towards the maybe a top 3 need in the portal?
Certainly seems like they're interested, right? I mean, one thing I'll say about Emmanuel, who's at, I believe it was Wyoming, Sean, I think is where he's at. He's already got 16 offers in a little under 48 hours now. Tennessee offered after Penn State last night, Auburn, Ole Miss, UCLA, got Oregon. It's got a bunch of quality schools, so I'll be curious to see how that plays out. One thing I'll say, with Chris gone, they are at 86, I believe, projected right now. So I would still think that a couple guys have to end up leaving. So let's see how that plays out. And then defensive tackle. Are they gonna pursue a defensive tackle if somebody pops up? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about quality. Yes, right. Yes, it definitely will. It's about quality. It's about quality, and it's about who emerges, and who they're able to get on campus and all those kind of things like that. So I think there's a lot of ways it can play out: wide receiver, O-line, defensive line. As Andy Frank told us before in one of the recruiting days, I mean, they're always going to look for offensive line and defensive linemen, quality guys that can come in and at least provide like second string depth or something like that. So be very curious to see how it plays out. But yeah, they have projected 86 right now. So I don't think we're done seeing guys leave. Now, I will say, are there 1 or 2 walk-ons being projected into that? There might be a couple guys who have a scholarship right now, but maybe not in the fall. So they'll figure it out. They always do. I'm not going to pretend to know the numbers and know the projections as well as those guys do.
So we'll keep an eye on all that stuff. Well, these guys will keep an eye on all that stuff, and I will be following up shortly, learning from them, just like you guys, about what goes on in the portal, recruiting, and otherwise. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Sean Fitz, Ryan Snyder. Once again, an excellent show from the both of you, and we'll be back hopefully with a better camera next week. One of the downsides of taking your entire studio to Beaver Stadium is that some critical equipment, like your battery charger, you leave in the press box. So hopefully we'll be getting that back before the next show. Any last thoughts, Fitz? Did you have something, Fitz? It looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, Ryan here in the chat said, isn't Satterwhite committing tomorrow? So unless something happened between yesterday and today, no. When I talked to him, no. That's Donovan Harbor is set to announce another guard that's on Penn State's board is set to announce tomorrow. So it's a little different. He's the Wisconsin kid. Satterwhite's the Ohio kid. So that's probably just a mistaken identity there. So, but no, that's where I know Ryan put in an RPM the other night.
Yeah, I was going to say,
go back and check that out. Penn State, again, plowing the fertile recruiting fields of Wisconsin for the first time. So that's an interesting subplot in the class of 2024.
I like the other guy just quickly. The guy I really like is Sexton. He moves so well. I know you talked about Lane Johnson making that joke on one of the previous shows of a former quarterback playing offensive line. Stuck with me, so it definitely was. So we'll keep all that up to date. We could go on even longer talking about Wisconsin linemen. Okay, Ryan, what's up?
If you check the site in about an hour, you might want to check out where Garrett Sexton ranks because that's about to change. It's going to be very positive. I'll leave it at that.
Ooh.
Oh, new rankings today.
Yeah,
Now we got a heads up.
working on it now. Yeah,
I love
No,
a
but
good professional tease at the end of the show, Ryan. Excellent job.
But I do have a pick in for Donovan Harbor. Obviously, he's just here on campus this weekend. Things look really well there. Unless something changes here over the next 24 hours, it should be good. I will say his teammate Corey Smith. I think he very interested in committing. I think from what I heard, family wants him to maybe just take his time a little bit. But Penn State certainly seems to be the favorite there. So we'll see how things play out. But looks good, man. It's going to be a good weekend, or excuse me, a good couple weeks here coming up. They're going to get a couple more guys, and then June's going to come in, and all hell's going to break loose.
So take your vacation in May is what I'm hearing. That is that's the rest of the show today, the BWI Live Recruiting Show. I'm Thomas Frankar, Ryan Snyder, Sean Fitz. Again, subscribe, like, rate, review, give us a high five and a pat on the back. All that stuff is super helpful. We'll be back with more breaking news when it happens and the BWI Live Show on Wednesday, where we talk about the blue-white game and our thoughts coming out of that. We'll be back then.